And looks like we're live.
Getting ready. Hold on. All right, we are live. We are live. Hello, NextOppSocial fam. We're excited to be here today to talk to you about an important topic. Your people. Who are your people? Especially right now during difficult financial times for small businesses, small business owners, entrepreneurs alike. If your target audience is in the B2B space, you might be seeing now some struggles with that, right? Your customers and potential clients may be struggling, and in turn, that might be causing you to struggle. So today we're going to talk about that. And also, though, dive a little more into defining more thoroughly really who your target market or ideal client is. Because I know I see this, I know JuJuan sees this, that business owners and people, we've just not taken enough time ourselves to get really clear on who we're trying to attract. So yeah.
Yes, I agree 100%. And when we broach this topic, I try to avoid watching news. I'm just honest. I take the news in snippets, right? Because I just don't want to see the constant negativity. I know two people wake up in the morning and, one glass half full, one glass half empty. And people, the question people ask is, who's right, right? And my argument would be both are right, right? If you wake up believing that the glass is half empty, you're going to find evidence to confirm that. Trust me, you will. If you wake up believing it's half full, you're going to find evidence to confirm that. So I try to avoid negativity, but you also have to realize the reality is taking place. So I was looking at these statistics and it was amazing to me. I mean, I know this is happening, but I didn't know how stark the numbers were, right? And so as a result of the pandemic, you have a situation where small business owners, and I'm talking, when we're talking about small business owners, I'm going to specify it more clearly. Typically, small business owners, we're talking about 20 employees or less, right? And statistically, if you look at all the different measurements and different reports that are coming out, they're saying 31% of these small business owners expect to have massive layoffs over the next 3 months. And for me, this was particularly disturbing because you did have this stimulus, right? These trillions of dollars are pumped into the economy, and we see how effective it was, right? Or how ineffective the administration of it was, and who knows who's getting ready to come out and watch the next, based on what I've been reading. They said 25% believe that as of right now, they're going to close forever. That's insane. 25%. You have the next 6 months, on average, when I was looking at all these different articles and data that's out there, next 6 months, 50% believe they are going to file bankruptcy or go out of business and never come back again. That's kind of the conditions we're operating in. So,
that
one
gives
of the things,
chills. That's some scary numbers.
And then, I mean, let's be real, we're in Detroit Metro. I mean, it just is what it is, right? So we know these numbers are even more stark and damning when you're looking at environments like the Detroit Metropolitan area. Like that's pretty, I guess what I'm saying is, look, if you're a B2B professional or entrepreneur, look, it just is what it is, right? I don't believe, and you can't make excuses to be successful at the same time, but the conditions are what the conditions are. And I see a lot of people in the industry who are beating themselves up, who are internalizing this, right? Like something's wrong with them, or maybe their value prop just isn't what it is. And look, there's some truth to that, right? The market is speaking. It's saying what we believe is valuable and what's necessary and what's not. But at the same time, understand that you are in the middle of a buzzsaw right now. And it's just going to be tough, right? And there's going to be some austerity measures you're going to need to take. There's going to be a lot of different things you're going to need to do to pivot in order to not just survive, but thrive in this environment. This is truly putting people's entrepreneurship mettle to the test, right? Because this is when these are the conditions in which entrepreneurs are born, right? And then, of course, look, people ask me all the time, well, what's required in order for business owners, and to even be more specific, what's the best thing people can do for African American business owners in Detroit Metro? And my response is make sure households are healthy and solvent, right? That's the bottom line. And of course, another stat that I was looking at recently is that you have 50%, not 50%, but you have 50 million people since the pandemic began who have filed for unemployment. We're approaching 50 million people. Well, you have a situation right now where we have about 170 million people who are actually quote unquote in the workforce, so to speak, right? Whatever those parameters mean. That's about 1/3 of the US population. People who are clock in, go to work, earn a living by exchanging their time to produce services and products, who are like out of the equation. And so when we start thinking critically about how to support small business owners, and we start thinking critically about how to support B2B entrepreneurs, well, it's not to be cynical, but I'm a little bit concerned about what I'm seeing here in Washington, right? And I just had to go there because I think small business owners need to have this perspective. They need to really understand what's transpiring. To be just rudimentary as possible, I guess the message I'm trying to deliver is, look, it's not that you suck. The environment sucks right now, right? So don't internalize this as, something's wrong with you in some respects, right? Know that this is just the environment we're working in. And so you got to step it up. And no one's immune to this, right? If you're in the B2B, unless you're born on third base, right? You want to chump children or something. This is the reality that you're dealing with right now. And when I think about that, there's a flip side to the story too. And I want people to also understand this, that you're going to have record numbers of individuals who are going to be starting up businesses as a result of these conditions too, right? I remember 2008 vividly. And for those of us who were in business in 2008 and experienced that financial trauma, those shockwaves that hit the economy, for many of us, this is kind of like par for the course, right? We know what's going to happen next. They are going to release another multi-trillion-dollar package. And we know most of those monies are going to be directed towards the small business market. And so on the flip side of the thing matters, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of businesses that are going to be born on a monthly basis here in the United States in particular, right? And so as a B2B professional, the question you need to ask yourself is, if all these new business owners are going to be launched, and the majority of them are going to be micro business owners, 5 employees or less, that's going to be majority, right? Until many of them scale and grow. The majority of these businesses are going to be launched are going to be micro business owners. And one of the critical questions you need to ask yourself is, if you're in the B2B space, is number one, what can I do right now to be relevant to these individuals now? And then anticipate, if you understand the growth stages of a business, what can I do to be relevant 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? You kind of need to be tracking your business along those lines if you're dedicated to that space, right? B2B is what you're really about. You're about that life. And those are some of the things that I think about when we talk about, in terms of perspective and how you should be looking at your business on a macro level. Those are the things that I think about with some regularity.
Let's dive into that a little more too, because when you talk about these businesses that are going to be emerging, right? I think of them almost as well as like a specific type of target client, right? I don't think all those businesses would necessarily be new business owners, right? People who haven't been in business before, but some of them might be, right? Because what I am seeing too is a lot of people who not even were laid off, but they're experiencing so much shittiness inside their corporate job that they're like, that was the push they needed now to go start their own, right? So they are fairly new. I know that there's a lot of people who are serving the B2B space that sometimes get hesitant to working with brand new businesses, right? Because of they're not always clear, right? Now on what they're doing, how they're doing it. But yeah, I think that's definitely something to lean into to think about a little more critically, how can you serve, if it is a new business owner, how can you serve new business owners, you know, and
Yes.
not more of your ideal client. Like, think about what you needed. What did you,
Mm-hmm.
when you were that new business owner that you didn't have? There are tons of things that we all didn't have as we were starting that we wish we had now. How can you be that person now? And that might not be within your wheelhouse specifically of what you offer right now, right? That might be something a little different or adjusting, or, you know, or lower tier, higher tier, depending on what it is that you do.
Yeah. So it's a couple of questions like embedded in what you just shared, right? It's a couple areas we can touch on there. You know, something that I work with B2B professionals, an exercise that I recommend for them to do is literally act like you're starting a business today. And it's something I will do every 3 to 4 months. I'll pretend like I'm brand spanking new and I'm getting ready to start a business, and I'll literally jump online. And the first thing I'll do is I'll start taking inventory of all the resources that are available, right? Because if you're an experienced B2B professional, it's kind of easy for you to kind of fall back on what you know. But we know because of the changing environment, technology is changing, methodology in terms of how to start up a business, the framework that you view starting up a business, it's changed dramatically. I mean, just really over the last, let's be face it, over the last 6 months, it's changed dramatically.
Yeah.
In terms of how you would go about launching a business, right? But I encourage individuals, look, find out how do you set up a DBA. I know it sounds rudimentary, but these are going to be the needs that fledgling business owners are going to have. And, you know, look, I also tell individuals, just because someone has quote unquote had success in corporate America, that does not necessarily mean that their education and the learnings that they've acquired in corporate America are going to easily translate to entrepreneurship. In other words, they don't know what they don't know as well. Entrepreneurship is skilled trade. And one of the biggest mistakes, and particularly from individuals who are accomplished in corporate America, are going to make is they're not going to respect it as skilled trade. And the reality of the matter is, it is. Just like any other type of skilled trade, there's certain rudimentary foundational understanding and learning that needs to take place in order for you to have success. And then you just begin to kind of take additional courses via experience, the people you have around you and you're learning, to kind of pile on top of that so you can grow and scale and make good decisions. So you need to understand that. I'm having conversations on a regular basis, whether a person is fledgling or not. I had a conversation yesterday where a young lady had no idea really what the difference was between a DBA, LLC, S Corp, or C Corp. She literally thought she could go to the Wayne County clerk office and set up an LLC. And I had to tell her, no, you do that through the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And for those of us who've been in business for a while, we think that's simple. Everyone knows that. No, they don't. They don't know that, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there. So, you know, when you talk about supporting small business owners, being aware of what are the advantages and disadvantages of certain businesses, right? In terms of how you structure your business. What are the tax consequences? What are the documents that are required and necessary to be in business and successfully structure your business properly? I would say easily to this day, 90% of the business owners I come across, they'll go ahead, they'll get the identification number from the state, set up their LLC, they'll go to the IRS website, they acquire their EIN, and they stop right there. It's over, it's a wrap, right? They don't have operating agreements. They don't have independent contractor agreements. They don't have non-circumvents. MOU, LOI, those acronyms are like a foreign language, right? Memorandums of understanding, letters of intent. Most of them aren't walking around with a confidentiality agreement or an NDA. And these are like basic documents that you need to carry with you at all times when you're initially starting up your business. And quite frankly, especially when you start to scale and take on business partners and take on employees, right? And understanding that these are some of the basic needs these individuals are going to have. Individuals are going to need access to a tax and accounting assistance, right? If you're a fledgling business owner transitioning from W-2, Or if, once again, you've been working in corporate America, right? You've been a W-2, understanding that self-employment tax is 15% on top of state and federal, and you better acquire some advice how to navigate those waters. That's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. Being able to understand the importance of a balance sheet, a cash flow and income statement, a profit and loss statement. These are documents. These documents contain information, the quantitative information that tells a story about your business. It can make the difference between a private investor walking away from the table and deciding not to do business with you. It can make the difference between a micro lending organization or a bank or any traditional lending institution. Even if your numbers are correct, even if your credit is in order, right? You can still be declined because you don't know this information, right? You don't have these things available to you at your fingertips. These are some of the rudimentary things that business owners need to know, right? Marketing, right? Understanding how to beta test your business. I know this is your forte, right? How to lean in and kind of, if you will, survey the market to find out whether or not your product or service is attractive, right? And beginning to understand the process of setting up price points and what that research looks like and what that process looks like, right? These are simple, rudimentary things that those of us who've been in business for a while, we take for granted. But these are needs that fledgling business owners, regardless of whether, once again, you're sick and tired of the environment, and you decide to pivot and start up a new business, or if you're from corporate America and you're looking to make that transition, these are some basic fundamental things that you need to have in order before you, quote unquote, make the leap.
I think a really important part of that too is understanding, and these are simple and rudimentary things, but you also point out that there are so many business owners even now that don't have them. And I think where that gets lost is that it takes us time sometimes to understand how important those things are, and we need them, even though they are very simple and rudimentary. So it's important that if you're able to provide those type of services, those type of documents, that type of setup, especially, and then even in like the creative space, the marketing space, the branding space, the copywriting space, it's one thing to think about and offer things that you're like, man, I really wish I had that when I first started, and these people need that. But then also framing that in a way and presenting that in a way that's going to actually meet that business owner where they're mentally at. Because what I find is that it's not just that a business owner doesn't know they need that. It's that they just don't even understand why, right? So you have to present, yes, you have these great offers, these things are important, these things are vital, but how do you present that to someone who may recognize that, yeah, sure, maybe that's important. They think, oh, whatever, I might not need that. But you got to think of a way to present that to them where they understand that urgency around doing that now as opposed to later. I find that a lot even already in my own business, right? We've talked about it before, but like never again am I going to have to explain to someone that being online is important. What a great way. I never have to explain it again. But up until 2020, I have still been having to preach that in my marketing world. Yes, you need to be online. It's very important, right? But now there comes the new aspect of like, I've had some people already reach out to me of like, I'm just trying to figure out how to learn how to use Instagram. Well, I know that, well, maybe you don't need to know. Maybe we actually need to use a different platform. Maybe your strategy should be something else. But me trying to get into all that with someone who truly right now, all they're focused on is wanting to learn how to learn Instagram, then I need to serve that and cultivate a relationship so that they can become someone who goes down this path with me to understand they need more than just that, or they need something different, right? But just trying to already be like, no, actually you don't need Instagram, and actually you need this instead, and blah, blah, blah. They're just going to tune me out. They're just going to tune me out and find their other solution. That's what I'm finding a lot of times too, is that if I don't meet them in the middle somewhere and just try and push what I know to be true, you know, as opposed to what they know to be, or what they think they need right now, or what they know to be true, then even though those services are all well and good and they're going to help them tremendously, people don't even realize they need it. It's the same reason why we didn't know we needed them in the first place either. We didn't understand why they were so important too.
Yes. So you touched on something that is so absolutely imperative, right? And that's building the relationship. And sometimes when you're in sales or when you're in the service industry, you just want people to see your credentials. They want to see your receipts, the fact that you've been in business, your third-party credibility, your testimonies, projects that you've worked on, et cetera, et cetera. And the expectation is that's going to register, right? And you're going to sit down in front of them. You're going to dispense advice. You're going to provide services to help them level up. And you just expect them to, quite frankly, comply, right? But that's not really the way it works, right? At the end of the day, people do business with folks whom they like, know, and trust. And, you know, I've been coaching a couple B2B professionals about this. You know, people will greet each other, meet each other online. They'll have a Zoom meeting. And then what typically happens is the two business owners end up, I don't even know any other way to describe it. They just end up spilling their guts out about everything they do, the services they provide. It's kind of like this back and forth. It doesn't have to be tit for tat, but you know, they 15 minutes here sharing what you do. Okay, 15 minutes I'll learn what you do. But here's the thing: there's been no relationship developed, right? I educate and I teach individuals to form people. You know, it's something that I return to time and time again. FORM is an acronym: family, occupation, recreation, motivation, right? Sitting down and taking the time to ask those important questions. Why did you go into business in the first place? What's motivating you, right? Your business is a vehicle. It's an asset at the end of the day. 5, 10 years from now, how do you want that asset to operate? What type of lifestyle do you want it to provide you, right? How important is it that your business be structured in such a way in terms of accommodating family life? Or maybe, let's be real, you have individuals out here who aren't married, who aren't having children, right? You have individuals who are like, look, it's all about recreation. It's all about traveling the world. Like, learn these things about people that you're working with. These are questions that most B2B professionals, I promise you, do not ask.
Yeah.
And once again, folks in business with people whom they like, know, and trust, people whom they feel like they have a relationship with. And people trust you when you take an active interest in their lives and what they're trying to accomplish and what's important to them, and understanding where they're at in their process, not just in terms of the technical aspect of starting a business, but where they're at psychologically, emotionally in that process, right? I've heard it said like this: life is 90% attitude. Man, nothing could be more truer, particularly starting up a business. It's all an inside job. So tugging and getting a person to share their innards with you, so to speak, is one of the most important things you can do. And once a person trusts you and respect you, they're going to be more inclined to listen to, they're going to be more inclined to comply with whatever advice that you're looking to dispense, right? And so that's one of the things that I would strongly encourage individuals who work in the B2B space to understand, right? Is you need to qualify individuals. So that's without going into some of the other things that we've covered in previous episodes. I mean, that's one thing I think that can't be stressed enough, right? The other thing is this, and this is so important, right? Understanding who your ideal client is or your ideal prospect. And there's a real rudimentary and simple formula that I share with individuals in terms of how to go about that process. Number one, you just need to understand your ideal client is a person that is searching for a solution. They've made a decision that they need to level up. They've made a decision that they are ready to take their lives or their business to the next level, and they're looking for a solution. Now, they might not know whether or not what that solution looks like. They may not know how that solution is dressed, right? But they're actively looking for a solution. You know, if you know, it's one of those things where if I'm having a conversation with someone at a coffee shop or over the phone, over Zoom, one of the first questions I'll ask the person is, where do you see yourself 2 to 3 years from now? What are you trying to accomplish? What's most important to you? And I'm gonna tell you, 9 times out of 10, if they can't answer that question, they're not searching.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just being real. You have to be able to ascertain very quickly, is a person actually searching? Are they hungry? Are they desirous for change in their business? And if that isn't there, they're not an ideal prospect. They're not an ideal potential client. And it doesn't mean that you dismiss those individuals, but maybe you put them in the contact manager and you just drip on them periodically, right? You put them in constant contact or MailChimp and you touch base. They're just not there yet, right? The other thing you have to ask yourself is whether or not the person has disposable income. You know, I think about it like this, and it's going to sound harsh, but it's something a business mentor shared with me years ago. And he said, JuJuan, look, if a business owner is not at a point where they can afford to set aside $100 to $500 for a service or resource to build their business, maybe they're not ready for entrepreneurship. Maybe they're just not financially there. And that's just being real. It does take resources to operate a business, even in today's environment, right? You don't have to go through you don't have the traditional boundaries, you don't have the traditional impediments that existed 10 and 20 years ago, where you had to have $15,000, $20,000 for licensing, acquiring a space, all this other stuff, right? The internet and social media has dramatically changed that. Fantastic, but you still need to have some disposable income, right? I think about, when I think about being a B2B consultant, almost look at it like, I think people need to take a Hippocratic oath, similar to what a doctor does, right? That I will do no harm. I'm not going to recommend a service. I'm not going to recommend a product to someone that is going to put them in a worse place than when they started with me, right? And you need to be very cognizant of that. Are the individuals whom you're having conversations with, do they really have disposable income? Because I'm going to tell you what, you talk someone into spending $200 or $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 on a monthly commitment, and they don't have disposable income, nothing good's going to come from it. Number one, they're not going to be able to maintain the service, which means their business isn't going to grow. And I'm going to tell you, that's going to hurt your reputation, because they're going to talk. And they're not going to talk about the fact they couldn't afford the service. It's going to come out their mouth sounding like, you know what, I just didn't get any value from it. No, they couldn't afford it. Yeah. And so, of course, they didn't get value from it, right? You also put them in the hole. If a business owner has to ascertain or make the decision between paying for their cell phone bill versus your service, just being real, right? Paying for their rent or their mortgage or your service. If you're putting a business owner, if you're putting them in a situation where their back is against the wall like that, you need to really take inventory of who you're attracting and the type of conversations you're having. You need to look at your marketing. You need to look at your approach to make sure that you're actually dealing with people who have disposable income to afford your services, right? You need to take inventory of that. You may need to adjust your prices. In an environment like this, you may need to, quite frankly, take a haircut and find ways to just talk to and work with more people, right? It's just the reality of the matter. The other thing that you need to take into account when you're looking at your ideal prospect is you don't want to get caught up in a land of maybe, right? So what's that island maybe about? You call up someone, you've shared the information, you give them the presentation, they know your value prop, they're looking for your value prop, but they're like, you know, maybe I'll follow up with you next week. Maybe give you a call tomorrow. Maybe, look, the bottom line is they're not urgent. You have to find people who are ready to pull the trigger right now, right? And I'd rather a person tell me no than maybe. Because number one, I get to find out the reasons why they're saying no. So I get to uncover the objection, and maybe that's something that I can overcome. That's something that I can address. But also, look, it saves me time. I don't want to be following up with someone a week from now, a day from now, a month from now. This process of instant repeat, that takes energy out of you. It's soul stealing, it's soul crunching when you're following up with individuals repeatedly and you're in the land of maybe. So when you're looking at your ideal prospect, you need to ask yourself, number one, are they looking? Are they searching? Do they have a burning desire to level up in whatever aspect or part of their business? Do they have the disposable income? And then have they made the decision that they need to address this issue now? What is their timeline? Is this a right now decision? If the answer is no, no, and no to those questions, that's not your ideal prospect. And that's important. Now, I come across a lot of B2B professionals, they'll tell me they're frustrated, and I'll ask them, well, how many people do you have on deck? How many people do you have right now that you're talking to who are ready to make a right now decision? And, crickets, right? And then that tells you right then and there, you're not really attracting your ideal client. You haven't quite figured out who that person is yet. Because if you did, you'd be able to check off those boxes.
Yeah. Well, and if you're quite honestly getting those no's and those maybes, and that's where you're at, right? And you don't have these people who are right now people, take some time to dig through those no's and maybes and think a little more critically. Who were these people? What were they doing? What was their situation? Why did I get those no's? Why did I get those maybes? What can I deduct from that to not repeat again?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I think that's almost just as important as figuring out who's going to say yes, is you got to understand who's going to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you only have so much time. I had a conversation with an entrepreneur the other day, and I said, look, if you're producing maybes, it's like if you're pursuing maybes, it's the equivalent of being in a relationship with a bad person, right? It's doubly hurtful because number one, you're in a relationship with a bad person, and the relationship's not fulfilling because you're not able to be your full self. You're not able to display your gifts and your talents and be open and be who you are, right? But on the flip side of it, that person is also taking they're taking up space of someone who does appreciate your services, will appreciate your expertise, is ready to make a decision right now. You have to quickly take that person and transition them to that contact manager, to that follow-up system that you have in place. And so they're not taking space of individuals whom you could be talking to who are ready to make a decision, right? As a B2B professional, of course, for me, I always think about this because in terms of LinkedIn, because I'll be frank, that's where I spend the majority of my time. That's where I believe B2B professionals should be spending the majority of their time right now. I think about the content that I'm posting, right? It's the content that I'm posting, or is my messaging. And this goes for LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Is your messaging, is your content attracting the type of individuals that you want to do business with as well, and that who see value in what you're providing? These are some of the critical questions you need to ask yourself, right? If you're thinking about pivoting. Conversation I had with a business owner last night, right? And he talked a little bit about the shiny object syndrome. And look, answering these questions also is a really good way to deter yourself from chasing the shiny object, right? Because you're going to have a lot of B2B professionals who are going to do that. They're going to start looking at things that look really attractive now, services or products they can buy right now, areas where they may not have expertise, but because there's so much clamoring for it, they're going to try to dip into those waters. And look, once again, it's a recipe for failure. If you have made up your mind that there's a particular service, there's a particular product, there's a particular area about business development that you are most passionate about, what you need to find a way to do is stay corely focused on that. One of the biggest mistakes, or I think errors in judgment in terms of thinking that individuals make when they're chasing the shiny object syndrome is long-term, you're messing up your brand. Because once again, people do business with folks when they like, no one trusts. People need to know where you stand. They need to know where is your expertise? Where is your experience? Where are your success stories? Not just for yourself personally, but other people whom you've helped. And if you're chasing one type of deal or one type of opportunity after the other, you're not creating consistency. You're actually disrupting your brand. You're sending mixed messages. People don't know what hat or box that you're jumping out of from week to week, month to month, year to year. Right. And that's something you need to be cognizant of as well as a B2B professional right now.
Yeah. there are 100 ways you can tackle what you're really good at, right? You know, and break it down into offers and ideas that meet people at their level, right? Meet people at their price point too. I think it was important that you brought up, you know, if you're getting a lot of no's, you're getting a lot of maybes, and it's a lot around price, then yeah, you've got two options there. You either need to change your price because of who you're wanting to work with is saying no, right? Or you are working with the wrong people and you keep that price, but you find the right people. So in terms of trying, you know, what would you suggest around, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. If you're finding yourself clearly unclear on who your target people are because it hasn't been working, what would be, I know you talked about some questions and some things to be asking individuals, but if you're feeling like you're just not attracting anybody, right? People are not coming your way. What are some things you would say that you need to look at now as to why that is?
So there's another exercise that I recommend to individuals when they're first starting their business, right? Particularly they're fledgling, they're brand new, they haven't been an entrepreneur before. It's a very simple exercise. The first thing I encourage people to do, number one, is write down the things that you're most passionate about. Write those things down, right? Write down a list, a minimum of 10 things. Try to build a list of 10 things that you're really, 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 really passionate about. The things that you would do whether you're being compensated for it or not, right? I would create that list. Next, I would write down a list of all the things that you're really good at. Things where the social evidence is obvious, where people have told you, you're really good at this.
Yeah.
Right? Or you've applied your skill or your trade and people have said, you're really good at this, right? It's a good signal when people are telling you, you're really good at this. You know, can you do this for me? You know, that's good feedback. Because there are things that you may be passionate about that you're not really good at.
Yeah.
Right? It's being real.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to write down the things that you're really passionate about, but also write down the things that you're really good at, right? And then what I would do, is so totally different than what would have done 15, 20 years ago, is I would literally take out my phone and the things that coalesce together, the things that are similar, I would take out my phone and for the next 15 to 20 days, I would beta test. Meaning I would take out my phone and not do 30, 40, 50-minute, hour-long extravaganzas, but I would probably take out my phone and do like maybe 5, 10-minute recordings of these different topics and these different things that you are passionate about and that you're interested in and that you're good at, right? And broadcast it across Facebook, broadcast it across Instagram, broadcast it across YouTube, and watch and see how the market responds.
Yeah.
Right? Watch and see how the market responds. So write down the things you're passionate about, write down the things that you're good at, and then record 5, 10-minute clips, right? Of the things that you're interested in, right? So I'm not getting ready to start up this type of business, but I'll tell you something that I'm really passionate about is health. I've always been passionate about health. I've always been involved in athletics at some form, point or another. I love the human form. You know, it's interesting to me, right? And lately, I've been toying around with different types of diets, from keto to intermittent fasting, a whole bunch of different type of ideals, right? And I've been kind of beta testing it on myself to kind of see how my body responds and what's working for me and what's not. If I were looking to start up a health and wellness business, right? Guess what I would be talking about every single day for the next 15 to 30 days? I would literally be on my phone recording 5, 10-minute clips about what my experience has been, how I feel, the research I'm doing, what I'm learning about diet, exercise, and basically looking to see how people respond to it. If the market is responding favorably to the content you created, then chances are that's a business, right? that's an opportunity. That's an area of a space of power that you can have a lot of success, right? And then what you begin to do is you sit down with someone, if you don't have the experience, who has some knowledge and insight in that industry or launching a business, and you formulate a product or service around it. And here's the thing, for those individuals who are responding favorably to your content, for your circle of friends, those people around you are saying, that's a good job, that's great, that's fantastic. You have to be willing to lean in and just say, oh, you think it's fantastic? You think it's great? How about $50 a month?
Yeah.
You know, how about I put together this virtual program for you and you pay $50 to have access to it on a monthly basis. Or because of social distancing, we find a space where I can demonstrate and live in color, face to face, belly to belly, how this can work for you, right? And that's what you do. Because here's the other thing. A lot of people will be chirping, they'll be talking how wonderful and great you are. You don't really know whether or not you have a business until you lean in and ask, right? For a person to part with their hard-earned currency. And if you find out people are parting with their hard-earned currency for that service or product that you're providing or insight or information, that's your business, right? And I know it sounds rudimentary, but it works.
It doesn't sound rudimentary, because I will say this, that I get this all the time with clients that come to me of just like, oh, I'm not getting any clients. My marketing's not working, blah, blah, blah. And then you come to find out they're not talking about it at all. They're not talking about it at all. They're not talking about what they do at all. They think that one time a month that they put their sales out there and then all of a sudden it doesn't come back. But meanwhile, we're showing on our Instagram stories our morning coffee and a walk and sharing all, share whatever you want to share. But in the same energy that it's easy for you to share those other things, get uncomfortable and share what you do. Get uncomfortable and talk about what you sell. Be really obnoxious about it. To be perfectly honest, if it feels obnoxious to talk about what you're doing, you need to think of why, right? Well, the way you're talking about it, are you actually passionate about it, and do you actually want to do it? Is it something that if it's not something that you want to talk about all the time, then you really need to consider if this is something that you should be doing. And if you're too afraid to talk about what you do, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. The other thing I always tell people is that you have to talk about, like, when you say, you need to talk about this for the next 20, 30 days, right? We're in 5-10 minute clips. You talk about it all the time. The reason why you have to also do that is not just to generate interest around, oh, look, JuJuan's really passionate about that, is because we're inundated with so much data, so much information, so much socialization all day long, that the person who's seeing your 5 to 10 minute message or whatever is also now going to go engage with 800 other things today. And they're going to forget that you talked about that at the beginning of the hour when you did. So you have to keep talking about it. You have to keep showing up. You have to keep putting your message out there 100 billion million times, because guaranteed the person who's listening will forget. Forget today. And they're going to forget tomorrow. And then they're going to forget the next day. But they're not going to forget a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, because you keep talking about it, right? It's not, and if they don't want to hear you talk about it, they won't listen. They'll move on. They'll go on to something else. It's fine. They're not your people. But the person who is paying attention, you need to keep talking to them over and over and over again ad nauseum until it feels comfortable, because it shouldn't be that uncomfortable to talk about what you want to do,
I agree. There's this axiom that's out there: if you build it, they will come. That's a lie, people.
Yes. If you build it, you also have to then do all the work, and then maybe they'll show up occasionally.
Yes. And you hit the nail on the head. Look, I guess what I want to encourage people to understand is this content that you're posting on Facebook in particular, and Instagram in particular. I'm going to start to stay with those two. And yes, even LinkedIn. This is not evergreen content.
Right.
the content, when you post on those platforms, you're hot for the minute that person's looking at your information. And so, yeah, it's not enough to post once a week. You're going to have to post 2-3 times, sometimes a day, to attract the attention you need to attract. Because it's not evergreen. It's not like YouTube, where if you post an article, or not an article, but if you post a video about a particular topic or subject, a person can search for it. And if your content's good, your content will end up, in the research results. It's not like Pinterest in that respect. It's not like Google, right? You need to understand that when you're posting to some of these platforms, it's like right now content. You have to get their attention right then and there, because it's only hot for as long as people are liking, clicking, looking. And then the moment the wave stops, that information disappears into the cosmos, okay? No one's gonna do a search and find that information. And you just need to be aware of that, right? And I love what you just said. Look, if you're talking about something that you're truly passionate about, that you're truly interested in, that you truly are, just it's just body, mind, and soul that inundates your spirit, right? You think about it day and night. You should not be uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's so absolutely important, right? And this is so important when it comes to branding and sustainability, not for the short term, but for the long term. Look, people do business with folks who they like, know, and trust. But you know what? People also do business with folks who are enthusiastic about their thing. If you're not enthusiastic about your business, no one else is going to be.
Yeah.
A lot of buying decisions are made purely off enthusiasm. A lot of individuals will partner with you, if nothing else, because of your enthusiasm, particularly in conditions like this, when people have so many reasons to be negative, when there's so much disparate, hopeless energy out here, where people are feeling stagnant, right? This is a wonderful time right now, if you're on 10 about your business, to get out there and let people know about it, because folks are looking for something. They're looking for things to aid them, to help them level up, not just in terms of their technical needs in terms of business, but also mentally, psychologically, spiritually, right? People are looking for ways people are searching and they're hungering for positivity, I promise you. And if you're on 10 about your thing, that's positivity. That's soul food. People get inspired by your own energy alone. So that's important. There's something else too. And admittedly, I am guilty of this, right? Because for me, when I think about my competition, right? For me, my default is just to outwork you. That's my default, right? Because I know that's the one thing I really can't control. I can wake up and I can make sure that I'm gonna outwork you. I can wake up at 5 a.m. knowing that my competition isn't waking up till 9, and know that I've got 4 hours of productivity done before they have, and take some solace in that. But there's another piece to this too that's really important. You have to set aside time to critically think about the challenges that people are having. You have to set aside time to think, right? At the end of the day, as entrepreneurs, we're problem solvers. And so you really should be setting aside, literally the same way you set aside time to shower, eat, and do all these other things you do, you should set aside time for critical thinking, to really look at the solutions that you'd like to solve and spend a significant amount of time thinking your way through these hurdles, thinking your way through these challenges, thinking of more effective ways to address these issues for yourself personally, as well as your clients, right? Because once again, at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. If you're an entrepreneur having success, 99.9% of the time, you're meeting someone's need that they weren't able to meet themselves, which means you have more time to read about it, more time to research it, more time to think about it, more time to learn and apply. And that's your value to the marketplace, right? The fact that you can more efficiently solve that problem than they have time, right, to get around solving. And so critical thinking is so absolutely important. That way, let's be real too, if you're thinking critically about the solutions you're providing, sometimes you can see a nasty headwind ahead of time, right?
Yep.
You can see something getting ready to transpire. You can sense it because you're thinking more than a day ahead, right? You can also uncover an opportunity a lot sooner than other individuals, right? Because once again, you're thinking critically, you're taking some time into it. They say the hustle's a muscle. Guess what? So is the brain, right? The brain is a muscle, and you need to work that muscle as frequently and as often as you can, right? And so these are some of the things that I think critically about too. I know there's an article out there about Warren Buffett. I mean, if you listen to any of the individuals whom we respect, right, the business icons of the world, you'll find that one thing they have in common is they spend a considerable amount of time just sitting down somewhere and thinking critically about what's going on around them and what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is so important too. It's like, you know, you can be on calls, you can be making these sales, you can be trying to make these sales, you can be having these conversations. But yeah, you absolutely need to take the time to reflect and also dive into what all those answers were, right? What were people actually saying? What didn't you hear right away or think through as carefully when you were in that moment having that conversation? Going back to that. I think that's also why doing them via Zoom is so, you know, having phone conversations, having Zoom conversations is valuable too, especially if you can do it via Zoom, and if it's okay for them to, you can record it, you can go back and listen, right? You can go back and really listen to something that in that moment you were more thinking about, like, how do I book this sale, right? Where if it didn't happen, or even if it did, maybe it felt like a struggle to get that to that point. You know, what are some things that keep coming up? I think that's also the value as well in the way that we socialize online. You know, it's not just about putting your stuff out there to hustle and to get, you know, those clients as well. But there's, you know, things like Facebook groups and LinkedIn and Instagram, you should be using as research, right? And asking those questions that truthfully you're not seeing other people ask for the sake of just understanding how people are thinking and feeling. That can save you a lot of critical thinking time too. If people are going to tell you right away, here's what I'm thinking. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I put out in Facebook groups, I'm a marketer, and I ask, does anyone feel like they're struggling with marketing? Right? I'm not pitching them. I'm not trying to, you know, whatever. I'm just trying to hear exactly the words that people are using when they say, yeah, I'm struggling, right? Oh, this doesn't feel like it's working. And listening to how they've decided to phrase that, and sitting through, like, okay, well, why? You know?
You know, so two things I'm thinking about too. So I want individuals to have some tools that they can take from this conversation, right? Questions that you can ask yourself in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, right? And it's a question I pose to myself with regularity. I should do it every single day, but even, look, there's no perfect people, right? We're all works in process. But a question that I ask on a consistent basis is, what are the top 3 or 5 things that I need to do today to make the biggest difference in my business? I ask myself that. And I ask myself, what are the top 2 to 3 things I can accomplish today that will make the biggest difference a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now? These are the type of questions that I will start my day or start my week with, right? And you don't try to knock down all of them because you'll get frustrated, right? Yeah. Just pick 1, 2, 3 simple things that you can do, right? And go out and apply those things and see how it works out, right? It's a lot of entrepreneurship experimentation. There's no Midas touch, you know? The answers that are true today are not necessarily true tomorrow, right? So a lot of entrepreneurship is experimentation and being willing to experiment a little bit, right? But another question you can ask yourself at the end of the day or at the end of the week is, number 1, what went well today? What went fantastic? What worked out, right? And then another question that you can ask yourself is, what sucked? Where did I have an epic failure? And what is the lesson I should learn from that? And take inventory. You know, me personally, I have a journal, right? But you may utilize some other tool. Whatever that tool is, make sure that you're bookending your day with those type of questions. And that will help you pivot more effectively. That'll help you think more critically about your business as well. And that's an exercise I would encourage people to adopt. I want to make sure people have like mental tools and assets they can take and kind of address these questions, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some things that I think about. I took those suggestions actually from Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans and Cynthia Kersey's, I think first name is Cynthia, Unstoppable, right? That's where I took those ideals from. And it's been something that's been a godsend to me personally and many of the business owners that I've shared it with. Just 2 simple exercises, right? To help you make better decisions.
So this is one of those talks where you need to go back and watch it again, because there's a few different things. We've got stuff here at the end of actionable content to help you move forward with this, but also throughout. There were a lot of things that you can, JuJuan talked about forming, talked about what questions to be asking, not only yourself, but your clients, how to critically think with that. There's a lot of different touch points in here in thinking about, how to shift and reframing your sales and offers to B2B, how to shift and reframe your target audience. Who is your target audience? Getting more clear about that. So definitely rewatch this one, take copious notes again, and then ask us your questions. If something didn't feel clear enough or you'd like us to dive deeper into an idea, please let us know. We're happy to do that as well. So with that, we will see you next week. Thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.